the excellent Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I go for refuge until the attainment of enlightenment. By the merits of generosity and others by me, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of sentient beings. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May all beings never be separated from supreme happiness, which is without suffering. May all beings remain in boundless equanimity, free from both attachment to close ones and rejection of others. Reactivating our motivation and view, our lived experience, this precious kind of Buddha Dharma, kind of this precious nature we have, this heart and this mind, kind of really reconnecting and settling to this essential goodness that is us. It's the nature of every being. So like really generating love, compassion, and wisdom. Turning that on, kind of relaxing into our natural state. So these are just a few reflections on keeping practice simple. They're especially just for people new to Buddhism or kind of wanting to like refresh their practice. But they're just general kind of reflections I have. So it's not an exhaustive kind of list, but it's more like things to kind of, spark back on or reconnect with. So keeping practice simple. If we're just interested like a Tibetan Buddhism or Vajrayana in particular, then the best way to go about like keeping your practice simple is just to really ask your teacher, because Tibetan Buddhism has a teacher-student relationship. Ask your teacher what she or he thinks, like in terms of what your practice should be, your formal kind of meditation session. That's the best way. So if you already have that situation and you can line that up to just get the direct advice from your teacher, it's always the best. They're the expert. They've kind of like really should be very established and kind of accomplished in this path if they're your teacher in a Vajrayana context. So their kind of reliable guidance is always kind of the most trustworthy. It's the most kind of relevant for each person. If you don't have a teacher, these are just some general reflections on, keeping practice simple. So I found in my experience that people who really stay on the path longer, the years go by and they're still kind of really curious about Buddhism. They're still really kind of trying to have a regular practice and meditation. They're still kind of interested in like exploring the teachings further and deepening and kind of having these outreaching actions with other beings and being more helpful. So they're like kind of still caring for the study aspect of Buddhism, the practice application of Buddhism, and also the service aspect of Buddhism, showing up for others, refining the concepts, and then being in non-conceptual wisdom mind with practice, and then kind of having these qualities of this our innate goodness and intelligence, talent, kind of shining out to others and like showing up in helpful ways with others. Beings who keep doing this, that I've seen in my experience, they really take the core foundational teachings of the Buddha really to heart. So this first turning teachings, or now this Theravada school teachings, the Four Noble Truths teachings of the Buddha, the truth of suffering, of conditioned existence, kind of holding on to reality in its kind of conditioned way. The second noble truth of the causes of suffering. What's the cause of this suffering? The third noble truth is the possibility of cessation of this suffering entirely. And then the fourth is the path to the cessation of suffering. So keeping practice simple, we really want to take these core bedrock foundational principles of Buddhism like really to heart. Like if we're like foundational Buddhists, Sutra Mahayana Buddhist, Tantra Mahayana Buddhist, Dzogchen practitioners, this is always the core, the bedrock, the foundation. So when it comes down to these four noble truths, like we really need to like kind of experience this in our body, in our world, to really get a taste of this. And in terms of formal practice, like we're really connecting to the Buddha. It's like historical Buddha Shakyamuni and these teachings. Like on the study side, like it's good. Like study about the Four Noble Truths of the Buddha. Like His Holiness Dalai Lama has a book called The Four Noble Truths. Great Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi has a book called Eightfold Noble Path. I think it's published by Pariyatti Press. Bhikkhu Bodhi, Eightfold Noble Path. The Venerable Khenpo Rinpoches have a book called Walking in the Footsteps of the Buddha. There's so many of these foundational teachings now available in book form, and I'm sure in video and audio as well. So really take the time to learn about this, to like really go deeper into it, because basically you can explain or understand all of the Buddha's teachings within the context of the Four Noble Truths. So all the way up to the innermost and to the outermost, they all are held in the kind of vessel of Four Noble Truths. They can be understood that way. And for a practical aspect of what we can do when we sit down to really connect to the Four Noble Truths, the Venerable Khenpo Rinpoches have always emphasized these four thoughts that turn the mind towards the Dharma, or the four thoughts that turn our mind away from samsara. And these are like the essential way we can really get a taste and an experience of the first and second noble truths. Truth of suffering, truth of cause of suffering. And so these four thoughts, they're often called, or four reminders, the four mind turnings. The first is this preciousness of the human embodiment, endowed with freedoms and favorable conditions. The second is impermanence of all conditioned existence. The third is cause, condition, and effect, or karma, the infallibility of cause, condition, and effect. And the fourth is the nature of conditioned existence and experience, and its experience is always suffering, or samsara. So these four mind turnings, to really spend time kind of studying them, listening to teachings about them, really contemplating them in your experience, and then kind of having these points, preciousness, impermanence, karma, samsara, to really spend time contemplating and kind of getting a taste of these points. And there's specific practices we can do. At the very least, we should really contemplate them. And at the beginning of every session, the Venerable Khenpo Rinpoches and so many great masters always say we need to reactivate this ground. And this keeps our practice kind of really honest and grounded, and very kind of like practical. The truth of suffering, the truth of like kind of dealing with challenges in life, and like bringing up gratitude for everything we have that's so amazing already in our favor. But the situation won't last long. It's fleeting. So like the good situation we could use for even better now. And the negative situations, they're impermanent. Like to not kind of exaggerate them too much. They'll change too. But that we really need to pay attention, close attention to helping others and not harming them. So doing virtuous things, merit, and avoiding non-virtuous things, like both in body, in speech, and in mind. So on the inside mentally, and how we show up in our conduct or with other beings, like to really always go towards virtue. Every little thing, so as Juju Rinpoche said, anything we can do that's virtuous, even the smallest little thing, don't overlook it. Always just do it. Could just be smiling. Could be holding the door for someone. Could be just having an aspiration, a longing for Dharma, a longing to learn more about Dharma, a longing to have more bodhicitta be like in your life, to like have a connection with a reliable guide, to like really to understand the Buddha better and like know his life story better. There's so many ways we can, like these small moments of deep virtue, they're really, really powerful and profound, and they're like very core and essential both at the beginning of our practice and as we continue along. Like they're always powerful, these like powerful little nuggets of kind of virtue or merit or positive grasping, however we talk about it. There's some refined kind of way of, it's conditioned. We're like holding on to something. Our mind is holding on to an object, but it's for the benefit. It leads towards wisdom. So that's why it's called positive grasping or merit. It's like orienting towards kind of the non-grasping, flexible wisdom awareness, this union of absolute and relative bodhicitta. So in order to get even more, we kind of turn our mind towards the Dharma in our everyday lives. Like we can read about the life so many times. You can read so many times these great masters have said, read the life stories of these great masters. Read the life story of the Buddha. Like the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, he has a beautiful book called Old Path, White Clouds. It's so gorgeous. It's so wonderful. It's so inspiring to read about the details of the Buddha's life. So, and read about these other great masters, these Vajrayana masters, and Guru Rinpoche, Yeshe Sojal, and these so many great masters. Read their life stories, how they pursue the Dharma, how they overcame so many challenges. how they serve beings and serve the teachings and reconnected to practice and like try to make everything as part of their practice, and inspired each other and were inspired by their teachers and by their life experience, using it really to like as fuel. Always to remember these four mind turnings: preciousness, impermanence, karma, samsara. They use their life experience to always reconnect and kind of reground into these core truths. Truth of the Four Noble Truths of suffering and the causes of suffering. Why? So to get a really big taste of like why we would want to pursue a path. Like why would we pursue a path of peace, the Buddhist path? Like why would we do the Fourth Noble Truth, the path, this path to cessation of suffering? So the great master Vimalamitra said in order to really have a firm foundation in Buddhism, we need to be really clear about two things. The first is the nature of suffering, of samsara, of conditioned existence and its unrealistic, mistaken perceptions. And then also like the qualities of nirvana or of enlightenment, to have a really clear like kind of appraisal, or like really what are the qualities of cessation, of nirvana, of being free of suffering. If we have a really good grounding, like a really kind of good, kind of detailed appreciation for what is samsara like, what is nirvana like, this kind of will like really fuel our path to actually sit down and apply and do practice and apply the practice and maintain that motivation also in our daily experience with others. To have this really clear, vivid experience, like the benefits of enlightenment, of liberation, and also the ongoing, unavoidable challenges of samsara for humans: birth, old age, sickness, death. The main human kind of obstacle is said of the human realm is said to be doubt and hesitation. Venerable Khenpo Rinpoche say in Door to Inconceivable Wisdom and Compassion, their book, they say the main way they define this doubt and hesitation of humans is we just doubt that virtue leads to virtue. We have hesitation around that. If we really got a firm conviction and confidence that virtue leads to virtue, merit leads to merit, positive grasping, positive karma leads to even more positive karma, if we really had a strong, firm, clear kind of conviction of that, then all of a sudden the path would be so easy. But we doubt that. We second guess that. And so that's like a really clear thing. Like really, these four mind turnings are so bedrock essential. Then when it comes down to actually sitting and doing a formal meditation, there's so many practice advice. Again, like I said, if you have a teacher or a spiritual guide, someone you're working with actively, ask them. But if you want just kind of general frames, which is what I'm offering, not like personal guidance, but just general frames I've heard according to Nyingma School of Tibetan Buddhism by Venerable Khenpo Tsewang Dongyal Rinpoche, Venerable Khenchen, Palden, Sherab Rinpoche. They always put the practice according to what the great Longchenpa and the great Jamgon Mipham Rinpoche and so many other masters have said, the three noble ones: noble beginning, noble middle, and noble end. Or noble beginning of a practice, the noble main part of a practice, and the noble conclusion of a practice. There's always within these three frames of the noble ones. And noble beginning is always refuge and bodhicitta. Noble middle is always shamatha, concentration, and vipassana, insight. And the noble conclusion is always dedication prayers and aspiration prayers. So whenever we hold a practice, or even any kind of like small little period of time in our life, within these three noble frames, refuge and bodhicitta, shamatha and vipassana, concentration and insight, and then finally dedication and aspiration prayers, it's always a complete practice, regardless of whether we're doing Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Dzogchen. The practices are always held within these three frames. So this is a way to keep the practice simple. And then refuge and bodhicitta, like at the very beginning of this time, I like said the refuge prayer that's very famous. It's a 4-line refuge prayer. It's in Tibetan and English. It's in PBC. It's like in the so-called Buddha sadhana, in the Buddha prayer book. It's Sanje Shodan Soji Shodom La Shanju Badu Dadu Ti Dagi Zinzu Zipe Sonanchi Drola Pinzi Sanje Dupasho. To the excellent Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha I go for refuge until the attainment of enlightenment. By the merits of generosity and others by me, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of sentient beings. And then secondly, the bodhicitta prayer, a condensed version, is 4 boundless prayers. Simchin Tamche, De Wadan, De Wei Judan, Demba Joji, Dunyal Dan, Dunaji, Judan, De Wajoji, Dunyal Mepe, De Wada Pada, Medawa Joji, Nering Jade, Nere, De Wetanyon, Semepala, Neba Joji. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May all beings be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May all beings never be separated from supreme happiness, which is without suffering. May all beings remain in boundless equanimity, free from both attachment to close ones and rejection of others. These two prayers are so famous. They're foundational for all Buddhist lineages. So this simple four-line refuge prayer, and the simple four-line kind of four boundless or four immeasurables, they're called. This kind of aspiration bodhicitta. These two simple prayers, if we want to like really be practical about it, we should just memorize them. So then wherever we are in our daily life, we're like in our kind of a cozy, nice kind of meditation room, or just out and about, or in the car, or walking, we have a few minutes waiting in a line. If we have these memorized, we can recite them to ourselves, and we can reconnect to the Buddha, to the path of enlightenment, and to like really kind of re-establish our motivation. Why am I doing this? For the benefit of all beings. Like, why am I going for refuge? So that I can actually become free and like have the ability to help all beings be free of suffering and the cause of suffering. This bodhicitta. So this is always the noble beginning. And it's a simple way to turn it on. These refuge and bodhicitta prayers. Every sadhana has refuge and bodhicitta prayers in Tibetan Buddhism. And so, but these are like simple core, like a core essential way that this works for whether you're Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, Dzogchen. This is a kind of an essence way that's approachable for all of these four different approaches to Buddhism. And then bodhicitta, if we're Sutra Mahayana, we have this. There's also the Brahma Viharas, or this metta practice for Theravada Buddhism. This boundless love for all beings, this really deep compassion, wishing them to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So it's specifically the four boundless. It's not exactly the Brahma Viharas, but it's really kind of activating this like really boundless love for all beings, and boundless compassion. These great arhats, these first stream enterers, once returner, non-returner, these arhats. They're so amazing. They're so venerable. It's just this extraordinary, like the achievement they've accomplished, like and for them to get liberated, then be an arhat. I mean, have so much love and so much compassion. This is really like they're so amazingly important and special. Like the great Shariputra and Moggallana so many beings at the time of the Buddha attained arhathood. These are our guides, They say the 16 arhats are the ones that are keeping the Dharma pure during all these degenerate times, actually. If you look in the gompas, the temples of Tibetan Buddhism, they almost always have these 16 arhats in the corners of a shrine room, main shrine room. Because they're said to be like really, we're asking them to help kind of reconnect to keep their promise. Like these 16 arhats promise to maintain the integrity of Buddhism throughout this time, degenerate age. And so then the noble middle always is concentration and insight, or shamatha and vipassana. And in Tibetan Buddhism, this is explained almost always as creation stage and completion stage. Creation stage visualization, completion stage dissolution practice. And so there's always going to be in the concentration side of the creation stage, wherever we have a sense of my experience, my mind is holding an object so that it can calmly abide, so that it can stay calm staying, or calmly abide. And so we're using an object of concentration. It could be a breath. Our breath could be a visualized object. It could be a statue of Buddha looking at his third eye or his heart center. There's different objects or supports of meditation, concentration. But shamatha always has an object that our subjective awareness is like holding itself. It's anchoring or rooting with that object. So it's staying with the object in order to have greater calm, this greater kind of sustained concentration abilities, this more settling. So we're basically like, our mind is naturally clear, like a pond. And what makes it muddy is we keep stirring it. And so if we can just hold ourselves and abide calmly, then gradually, just naturally, the mud that was stirred up will settle to the bottom, and the kind of natural lucidity or clarity of our mind, clarity of our heart, will just automatically kind of like be reestablished. So this is calmly abiding. And then the vipassana, or insight, is always this, once we're more calmly abiding, then we have to release all sense of holding on to anything, because the nature as it is already natural. It doesn't require being held in any way to be natural. It is natural, but we're temporarily using this as a support to kind of anchor our kind of wandering wild monkey mind so that it becomes more calm, can abide. And then Vipassana, or insight, we look directly to the nature of our mind, this holding. Who's holding? Who is this sense of me that's experiencing, the knower? So we try to use some kind of technique to directly have the mind look at itself, to have our awareness see itself or self-illuminate. And then there's a lot of techniques around that. You should receive those from your teacher or, from great wisdom guides. And these insight practices. So in the more Theravada level or foundational Buddhism, they say seeing the nature of conditioned existence. One way, it's like 4 Satipatthana Suttas. This is in a lot of Vipassana traditions. A very popular one now, Goenka Vipassana tradition, which I have a deep reverence for and practice myself for about 3.5 years, like very seriously and with a lot of, I just love it. Loved it, and it was so helpful for me to get really grounded in these foundational principles of Buddhism, Buddhist teaching. The Satipatthana Sutra is this fourfold foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness of body and physical sensations in the body, mindfulness of mind and the mental contents or the experience of the mind, what the objects it experiences, phenomena. So these 4 foundations of mindfulness: body, physical sensations, mind, and its mental objects, its kind of experience. One way is to ground as an object of attention. So the shamatha is like body sensations, because we all have them. It's not a Buddhist thing. Like breathing as an object of like where we're trying to feel sensations. This is a natural human thing. If we're alive and we're human, we're breathing. So as an object, we like feel the sensation of breathing, like say at the entrance of our nostrils. And then the Vipassana side is to recognize the impermanent nature of those physical sensations. We're seeing more clearly the nature of that experience. So this is one way to like define insight or Vipassana. And if we step back, we can see it like in this more like internested jhana or vehicle system of Buddhism that sees like foundational Buddhism as being the heart, which extends into Sutra Mahayana, extends into Tantra Mahayana, extends into Dzogchen. Depending on our view is how we'll define the technique and the practice of shamatha and Vipassana, or concentration and insight. So what is considered to be insight, for example, or the Vipassana, depends on the view we're holding. So at this level of foundational Buddhism, they're saying seeing the impermanent nature of conditioned experience is the insight. And then Sutra Mahayana expands that based on its view. And Tantra Mahayana expands that. So gradually the insight or the wisdom component gets more inclusive, more expansive, not just seeing the nature of conditioned mind and its experience, but the nature of unconditioned mind and its experience, or its like radiating field of awareness. This is how the insight or the wisdom is growing. So we're seeing more. We're seeing the nature of conditioned mind and its holding patterns, unconditioned naturalness, and its field of awareness. So, but in these ways, like it depends on the view of like what we're kind of, how we would define concentration and insight. And then now going to the third noble one, the conclusion of our practice, always there's this dedication prayers and aspiration prayers. So we're reconnecting to that initial motivation of bodhicitta, and we're dedicating any positive virtue, any positive grasping, any positive energy that we just kind of really brought up and like saturated our experience in, our body and speech and mind, like these good wishes and good things we're saying, and this kind of really good mental motivation for all beings is bodhicitta. We're reconnecting to bodhicitta, and we're dedicating that for the happiness of all beings and the enlightenment of all beings. So there's dedication prayers that we can memorize, like the one that's so famous. Sonamdeye tamje zepanye tone nepe danam bajete jegana jibalon drubaye sepe sole drowa sho. By this merit may all obtain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. This is a short 4-line dedication we should memorize or can memorize. Then we'll have it on the go. And that's a complete dedication prayer. And then in addition to dedication prayers, we make aspiration prayers. We like wish for even accumulate even more virtue, more positive benefit for beings, like and more abilities to do this and more accuracy of our understanding, so we can actually take responsibility and like really effectively accomplish the welfare, like the benefit of self and others for our happiness and the lasting freedom, the enlightenment of all beings. We make aspiration prayers. The only limitation of our mind is how much we our concepts, our namtok, how tightly we grasp onto our mind. So it's infinitely flexible. Really depends on the habit way that we hold our mind. So aspiration prayers are loosening up, are tightening how tight our habits are. We're like imaginatively saying, I want to just follow exactly in the footsteps of the Buddhas and the great bodhisattvas like Manjushri and Samantabhadra, just as they dedicate the merit. So I too follow in their footsteps and dedicate in the exact same way. We use our concepts and these like wisdom activities of all these noble enlightened beings, and we just totally sync up in these big, very big, deep, wide scope, nuanced ways with just these really genuine, heartfelt bodhicitta aspirations. That's called aspiration prayers. So these always kind of having when we have a practice session, a formal session, it could be a minute, could be a few minutes, could be an hour, could be longer. They're always held within these three noble ones: noble beginning, noble middle, noble conclusion. And the great master, Kabje Tinley Norber Rinpoche, he always said, kind of, especially at the beginning, keep your practice session short enough so that when you finish it, you feel really good about it. You don't like let it drag on and it becomes kind of boring and you're kind of tired. You like keep it short enough so that in the end you're like, oh, I did that. That was so good, And then you can have a positive habit towards practice, like, oh, I'll do it again, So end it in a way where it's like short enough where when you end it, you can feel really uplifted and really just happy about it. And gradually, like, you can extend your practice session, the duration, and you'll have like more kind of calmness and more insight to deal with more of the kind of turbulence that can come up in practice, just dealing with the different emotions we're not yet aware of and the different graspings we have that we haven't seen yet. So gradually, as our practice matures, as it stabilizes, as our aspiration gets wider, and our kind of like seeing of nature of samsara and the nature of nirvana comes a little brighter, then gradually we would do that to build up kind of the muscle memory of our wisdom and our compassion. So these are just some simple reflections on keeping practice simple. We reconnect to the lives of the Buddha and great masters like Guru Padmasambhava and read their life stories. And then always reconnect to the foundational teachings of the Buddha, the historical Buddha, specifically the Four Noble Truths. And like both study them and also in practice, we can do that with the 4 mind turnings. And then keeping our actual formal practice sessions in with, noble beginning, noble middle, noble end. And then in post-meditation, after our formal session, we get up and we're doing daily activities. Like every small little virtuous thing has so much positive impact and it multiplies. So always, if we do a virtuous activity, we can immediately kind of dedicate that merit for the happiness and enlightenment of all beings. So this way, if we keep the 3 noble ones like active in our experience, we can just in our daily lives reactivate them. Connect to refuge of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Re-establish, re-brighten our motivation of bodhicitta, of wisdom and compassion. And then do an activity like a kind gesture. And then really reconnect by this gesture, by this thing I said, by this thing that was just accomplished, or it could tiny little thing, opening a door. Oh, may this bring the happiness and enlightenment of every single being. And then may I follow in the footsteps exactly of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May it totally line up exactly in their footsteps to be the perfect kind of activity. Then this is simple, then done. It's like just less than a minute. In daily life, we can kind of keep our experience within these 3 noble ones. Then everything is constantly becoming this offering, this way of living the Dharma, way of reconnecting to our practice. But it's so important at the very beginning, especially when we're getting used to Buddhism, we learn some about the essential bedrock principles that Buddha taught, such as 4 Noble Truths. And we really take time just dealing directly with our mind. We've like put time aside where it's just 5 minutes, 10 minutes just to be with our experience and like really do a practice. That's like what I kind of outlining here a little bit. This is all foundational Buddhism that's like only going to help every other layer, every other approach to Buddhism. This is foundational to all Buddhism, all Buddhisms, all approaches, all yanas. All views include this. They just expand and kind of enhance and like include more beauty, more of the richness of experience. And so that it's always going to be essential. And if like we get confused and the years go by, or we're like learning a lot of practices and we're taking different empowerments, for example, or seeing a lot of teachers, we always can come back to these foundational principles of Buddhism, and it'll only reinvigorate our practice. It's always going to be only good. And then like really, it just really grounds, makes us very practical, decent guys and gals. Like these 4 mind turnings aren't about Buddhism. They're just very practical, intelligent things to do. They're just logical. And they kind of orient our motivation and our view, so it naturally lines up with virtue, and that virtue is lined up towards wisdom, towards the natural virtue that comes from our compassion and our wisdom when we just let our mind and our heart just be natural and open. And then another bedrock thing for keeping practice simple is really practice with an open mind and an open heart. Like no matter what practice we're doing, like allow room to like let the practice expand, to let it deepen, to let it richen, like enrich. Like, so we don't have to get tight over only this practice and do exactly this way. Like we're always following very clearly as we can the exact instructions of the Buddha and these lineage masters and our teacher. But we're also on with our own mind. We shouldn't get too tight. Remember, this is the only way. We should really loosen up or analyze and loosen up any kind of fundamentalism, extreme habits we have. This is the only way to do insight. This is the only way to do compassion practice. This is the only way to do concentration. The Buddha only taught this. This is what it means to be such and such, the only way, This is all just extreme view stuff. This is like so bedrock a cause of suffering, samsara. So just keep open mind, relaxed mind, to and curious mind, but really practical, or really getting in touch with our body and our mind with others, because there's always triple gem, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Sangha is always an essential part of Buddhism. Community, intersubjectivity, Shila, the interactivity, the actual ways we're with others, Shila, ethics, Sutram. This is always foundational. It's always essential in Buddhism. Follow the teachings, follow a reliable guide, ask for advice, and do in a community with people. We can get good feedback. We can inspire each other. We can ask for help. All kind of lined up according to this love, compassion, wisdom, or this bodhicitta. We support each other, not in a dogmatic tight way where these are the only friends I'll have or that kind of thing. Buddhism's the only way, not like that. But just we need these supports. We need the support of Sangha. We need the support of teachers who know way more than us, help us kind of avoid certain pitfalls that are preventable. We don't have to get stuck in some rut for a long time. They know the path enough, and they're really caring and trying to help us have happiness and be free of suffering, cause of suffering. These great teachers, if they're reliable, authentic teachers, that's their principal motivation, bodhicitta. And we need this, and we need Sangha members to kind of, be in life together. We're always part of groups, community. We're always part of worlds, It's not just me, my own path, dealing only with my mind and my emotions. Yeah, I have to deal with that. That's what I can always deal with, but it's my mind why. I go for refuge why. So I can better show up with beings. So I can be more caring with beings. So I can help them more effectively. I can kind of put what's going on with them first, really be curious about it. And see my goodness, the preciousness of me too. I have all these talents. I have things to offer. I have things to contribute, I can make my own artistic flourish in this. And I can also really take the time and the kind of humility to see, oh, these paths are so profound. They're so vast. Really have that deep humility to take the time to study and practice Buddhism and be really gradual, step by step. And then it will kind of really gradually grow this, coming back to the core foundational practice, expanding it into bodhicitta, expanding it into pure perception and Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism if we want to go that far, expanding it to the great kind of completion or perfection of natural awareness, natural body, natural speech, natural mind, if we want to go that far, but always having this bedrock essential teachings, the foundational teachings of Buddha being the heart, very heart of our practice, so that it stays grounded, practical, connected to our body, connected to our speech, connecting to our mind, but in an open, fresh way. So we also allow the unconditioned, boundless nature of ourselves, this Buddha nature, this bodhicitta, absolute and relative bodhicitta. We always allow that also a lot of room to breathe, to naturally do what it does with that open, flexible, open-mindedness. then it'll kind of like just the wisdom of our own natural innate intelligence and this outreaching, compassionate kind of expression that it always has, this energy of kind of enlightened or compassionate activity is always there. So like with open, fresh light touch, that'll kind of fill out the Four Noble Truths, and they'll just gradually, naturally expand into even greater compassion and greater wisdom for the benefit of self and others right now and in the very long term. So that's the reflection. Thanks so much, friends. I hope it's helpful. I'll dedicate the merit. By this merit may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara may I free all beings. Precious bodhicitta. Those without it may it be generated, and those who have it may it never diminish, but always continue increasing. Deity, mantra, and dharmakaya are the nature of appearance, sound, and awareness, the pervasive kaya and wisdom display of the Buddhas. May practitioners of the profound and secret great perfection remain inseparable from the innermost, one-taste awareness of wisdom mind. Thank you.